Raleigh Score, in conjunction with Shaw University, introduces. Are you ready to start your own business? We are excited to have you join us on this 13-week journey. Our goal is to provide you with a consistent message and a solid methodology. Our approach is simplistic in nature. Therefore, we believe if you are committed and willing to do the work, you will come away from this program confident that your business plan is solid. Welcome to the pre-recorded video of Session 8, which is titled, How to Build a Financial Plan, Session 1 and Navigating Challenges with Confidence. In this session, we'll begin discussing how to build your financial plan. We will also discuss how you can skillfully and confidently navigate diverse or challenging environments and conversations with confidence. Lastly, we will discuss why mindfulness matters and offer a few extra tools to add to your mindfulness toolkit. In Session 8, your facilitators are Jay Graves and Darlene Thorne. Going through the process of constructing and understanding a financial plan is a valuable exercise for any business owner. Your financial plan will help guide many of the day-to-day financial decisions of the business. So, as always, please find a quiet space and be prepared to take copious notes. If you have any questions, please email them to patty.williams@scorevolunteer.org. Enjoy the training. Up first is Dr. Lynette Woods with some exciting news about Shaw University and the Business School. Dr. Woods.
So much for the opportunity to bring some good words from Shaw University, especially the School of Business and Professional Studies, where I'm the dean. I want you to know that at Shaw, since we first started the series with the business plans, Shaw has been making some steps towards getting business separately accredited. So the university is accredited, but we want to have the business program specifically accredited by the premier accrediting body worldwide, and that's called the AACSB. So we became members on October 1, and that's the first step in getting your accreditation. The other steps will take us several years to get there, but I want you to know that Shaw is moving forward, which is a big deal for a private HBCU. Most of the HBCUs that have this AACSB accreditation, which only it's only about 5% of the business schools in the world that have this accreditation, but most of the HBCUs that have it are public because they have sources of funds from outside or from the state. And private HBCUs don't have that. So Shaw is very ambitious in saying that we want this, and I think we can get it based on three primary things. One is our vision. We have a vision to build futures for the students who come to Shaw. And we're not just talking about, it's a good idea, education is great, but what makes a good education for these students? Because to get this accreditation, you have to have a really high quality program. We need support, of course, since we don't have state support. So the support would come from friends and alumni of Shaw. And we're starting a program that I call the 100 at 100, where 100 friends or alumni contribute $100 per month on a recurring basis so that we would have the resources to attract and retain high quality faculty. The last part of that equation is a team. We're building a team of faculty that are innovative, student focused, and very knowledgeable in their area. And I'm happy to announce that Dr. Angie is going to be one of our adjunct professors as part of the team that we're building. So we're very serious. If you want to know more about what's been happening, we published a newsletter about 2 weeks ago. It came out. It's called Accolades, and it gives you it gives you a chance to see what's been happening at the university, especially the School of Business and Professional Studies in the last few months. So to get that newsletter, why don't you just email me? I put my email in the address in the chat, lynette.wood@shawu.edu, and I'll be sure to get you the link to the newsletter. Because a lot of times people say things are going great, but there's no evidence. So I want to provide you evidence. If you know of students or prospective students, or maybe you might be thinking about going back to school, think about Shaw University Business School, especially if you're a veteran, because veterans actually, they have a special way of getting their education paid for, and we are a private school. So you have to consider that when you're going back to school. We're very, very serious. Quality matters. Excellence matters. And I've been saying it every time I had a chance to speak in the last few weeks, that I am happy to be associated with this SCORE Shaw partnership because it's high quality. And I don't say anything just to because it's the right thing to say. I only say it if I mean it. And I appreciate the opportunity to partner here. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing our business programs reach a totally different level because we may be small, but we can be very good. That's what we owe to our students. And I thank you all for this opportunity. I have a lot more that I could say, but I don't want to hold up the rest of this workshop. If you want to know more about what's going on at Shaw School of Business and Professional Studies, feel free to email me. I'll talk to you. I'll email you. Anything I can do to get the good word out, I'd be glad to do it. Thank you all.
Well, welcome everybody. Wonderful to have you here again for those of you who are our repeat folks, and welcome to the new folks. Again, we're posting the videos for the previous sessions in the chat. So please, feel free to go back and look at those and you can certainly catch up. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on financials. And we broke this down into two sections because we knew that this might be one of the kind of deeper conversations that we have with the group. I'm actually going to start off by just kind of showing everybody the areas of the financials that you need to consider when you're first starting your business, a basic P&L, and then we'll go with an assignment to have you start to go through and kind of think through your businesses, and you can start to map out your financials. And then next week, based on the questions that we have and maybe some of the follow-up that we get from the homework, we'll do another session where we can kind of get more in the weeds and really make sure that we're helping everybody out. And I misspoke, it's not gonna be next week because I think we are not gonna have a session next week. It's gonna be the week after. So you actually have 2 weeks of homework time that you'll be able to spend on this. So you'll have plenty of time to get questions in. In the meantime, if you run into anything as you're kind of walking through. So let me go ahead and get started. And like I said, I kept this pretty high level. So I wanted just to go with some key business finance terms here, just as you're going to hear as you're talking to different people in business or as you're going through your financials. The first one is sales. So sales is also known as income or revenue. So people use that phrase interchangeably quite a bit. But this is the total amount that you're selling from your product or your services over a certain period of time. So when I was head of sales at Roche, sales was everything that I looked at. I was responsible for that part of the P&L, and I had some responsibility in other pieces of the P&L because I was a big cost center, and we'll get to that soon. But the biggest piece for me was generating sales for the organization. And I would look every day and see what our products and our services, what that had contributed to the organization, how much sales we got in from our marketing efforts, from our field sales efforts, our online sales efforts, everything that we were doing for sales. I would look at and monitor, and it would be the same for everybody here with your small business or your business. And then cost of goods sold, this is really important. This is the total expenditure that you're going to have on inventory items, which customers buy. And this can include your items that you're selling, your freight, your manufacturing costs, packaging, services, labor, material, anything that you're spending a cost on. This is what falls under this area. And I'll give you a little bit of a story where this is something that I did not really think through totally when I first got into business, and it turned around to bite me in the tail. So this is definitely an area that you want to comb through and think really deeply about as you're building your business plan. Gross profit essentially is just your sales minus your cost of goods. This will tell you what your gross profit is. And then you have overhead, which is another kind of cost, but it's in a different kind of line item. So this is expenses associated with your ongoing business operations. So this would be things like rent, merchant services, vehicle maintenance, leases, things like that. So this is kind of in a different category, but it's another level of cost. It's just not cost of goods sold. And then your net profit is basically your gross profit minus your overhead. And what remains is what you use to pay for expansion, loan repayment, equipment, income taxes, another thing I'll tell you guys about. And I included owner's draw. So if you're a single business, then this is what you would pay out of. So I'll give you a quick story to kind of put this into context, because this is really critical. So when I first left the military, I was fortunate enough to have spent some time in China, a little bit of time in India, and whenever I would go somewhere overseas, I would immerse myself in the local cultures, and so I had learned about incense. I learned about essential oils back before it became all the rave. Like this was in the late 90s. And when I got out of the military, I had a friend of mine. I went into pharmaceutical sales, and some of the doctors were starting to get into holistic medicine. They started talking about Eastern medicine, and they started talking about oils and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, I've been to where they actually produce this, like really high-end oils. And they were complaining about the fact that everything that they found in the US was chemicals. It wasn't healthy, it wasn't pure, and all this other stuff. Now, granted, I had no true passion about oils or anything like that at the time, but I saw dollar signs. And so I started to build just a quick business plan. I had zero business knowledge whatsoever, but I pulled together a plan and I said, okay, I know that I can get manufacturers from overseas where it's pure, high quality stuff. So I went back to the offices and I said, would you guys buy this if I found these types of products? And they said yes. And I said, how much? And they were willing to pay a nice penny for it. So I said, that's great. I reached out to some of the places I knew in India and China, and they said, you know what, we actually do distribute to the West Coast of the US, so we'd be able to get product to you. I started picking out products, and I said, okay, so I'm gonna just start selling to these offices. It started going pretty well. Some of the things that I didn't consider, what I did consider in my cost of goods was what it would take for me to purchase my merchandise. What I didn't think about was the cost of transportation from the West Coast, which was really expensive. I didn't think about repackaging, breaking down, the time that it would take to do that. I actually had to pay somebody to do that because I had a full-time job at the time and I had a 3-month-old at home. So I didn't think about labor. I eventually expanded to a kiosk in a mall, Triangle Town Center. I needed to hire more labor. But the good thing about it is that the margin was so high on these products that I kind of took a hit for my mistakes, but I was able to recover quickly. So, I felt kind of lucky in that. But the next piece that hit me, so I'll take it to the gross profit. So I was getting pretty good at gross profit right there. What I didn't really think about was the long-term cost of the kiosk and all these other things that I had just jumped right into. In my mind, I thought, hey, I'm making all this money off this. I'm going to go get a kiosk. It's not a problem. I can cover it with what I'm making, but I'm not putting any money in my pocket. I'm missing key expenses that I'm actually now having to pay out of pocket because I'm making mistakes. And I didn't identify my cost of goods sold well. So eventually I got to the point where I was able to recover from that. But with my employees, I was really excited. I handed out my first paycheck that wasn't coming out of my pocket. It was coming from the business account. I was so excited because it only took 3 months. I was like, man, I'm like the next big thing. I am going to be the essential oil magnate. So the great thing about that, or the funny thing about it, is I had no idea how to do taxes. I handed these folks a check and just went on about my business. I did that for several months until the local IRS wanted to know why I wasn't paying sales taxes, why I wasn't paying Social Security taxes, why I wasn't paying into Medicare, why I wasn't paying this tax, that tax. And my response on the phone was, how in the world are you supposed to run a small business if you're going to take all these dang on taxes? And they said, well, you got to figure that out. You're an operating business. And I said, okay, all right. So I know I've mentioned it before in some of the classes. I don't like to deal with numbers in my business. So I hired a CPA back then. And I learned from then on in all of my business ventures that I've done, I hire a CPA, an accountant, to make sure that all that stuff is good to go. But I just kind of tell this story to let you know that it's really important that you go through all of this and really be thorough about every single area. Because I really got lucky. I really lucky in the fact that some of these costs that were hitting me weren't so high that I couldn't recover from it. I didn't rack up so much debt that I didn't recover from it. And the margin on my product was so high and the demand was so high that I was able to kind of dig myself out of this hole early. And then I was able to get myself back in debt a little bit with the taxes to pay those, but then recover myself out of that quickly. And with that business, I actually had to make a decision on healthcare. So like I said, I had a 3-month at home. I was doing pharmaceutical sales. The business was starting to do well, but I had to make a decision. Do I stay in corporate or do I go off on my own? And healthcare was the big decision there because it is a huge expense. And it would have been a big expense for me to do at the time. So we've kind of talked about through our business planning, you know, these milestones that you need to think about and some of these areas you need to think about. And for me, that was one of them was, could I keep my family protected and well at the time? And I couldn't. The great thing is that local folks knew about the kiosk, and one of the individuals actually bought it from me at a pretty nice profit. So I was able to learn from a ton of mistakes, a lot of scary mistakes, and then kind of move on with my career. But anyway, I just tell that story so that you can kind of think through these terms and some of these areas that you really need to focus on. I also wanted to add here just a list of some things to think about when you're doing your startup. These are kind of typical startup costs. Some of them may apply, some of them may not. You may have additional ones. But I wanted to list these out because these are the ones, some of these are the ones that bit me, and there's some of the ones that I see that bite other people, particularly, you know, around, say, communications, advertising, and marketing. You know, sometimes people don't realize the expense that it costs to do true marketing, or, you know, to purchase databases, or to do what you need to do for your outreach. Insurance and fees, this is another one. Permits, this is something that often bites people. I know Patty and I think we were talking to somebody one time who was wanting to bake things out of their home, and Patty knew all about, you know, you got to have these requirements, you got to get this license, you got to get this permit to be able to do that. And so, you know, people's eyes start to widen out when they realize that, hey, all I wanted to do is make fell cakes. And then you got to realize that, you know what, you have to have a door here, you have to have this here, you have to have a permit here, you have to do that. Even with my little kiosk, I had to have a merchant's permit, I had to have 2 other permits. I had to have a permit for whatever reason to be able to ship those oils across country even. I don't know, they were not considered a dangerous good, but it was some other category. I had no idea about that. So if I were to know what I knew now and go back then, all of that stuff I would have researched and I would have mapped out in my startup costs. And again, you know, salaries and personnel, things like that, you know, labor costs. So anyway, this is just a really good example for you to be able to look at and think about some of your startup costs. Now, I apologize for the graphic being kind of blurry here, but hopefully you guys can see this. I found this online. I thought it was a really good example of a profit loss statement. And this is something that you'll be able to take and kind of use, and you can plug into your financial plan. So as you see here, this really follows the definitions that I was going through earlier. You know, they capture what their sales are here at the top, and they get their total income, and then they subtract out their cost of goods. So, you know, they made almost $66,000, but then when you subtract out the cost of goods, they're at 61, almost 61.5. And that's when people get excited. They're like, oh man, I'm making so much money in this. But then you got all these lines here. That's what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, of little things that you have to consider that start to chip away at your profit. And so as you see, as you go through, they've got payroll, they've got automobile, they've got their bank service charges, all this stuff you need to consider and map out in these areas. And by the time they get done, their total expense is $47,590. So really what they're putting in their pocket is $13,000, $13,800 is what they're putting in their pocket. Now they've already done their payroll. And so really that would be what's left for your business, for you to either reinvest, to pay yourself, add equipment, whatever it is that your business plan, whatever your business plan says that you would need to be doing with that money at that time. But this is just a good example that I found. There's tons of examples online. I would encourage you to look online if you need some references. Certainly you'll have this video that you'll be able to go back and look at. But this is kind of showing you how a P&L works in practice. A couple of things I wanted to add here of things to consider, right? Because a lot of us are going to be independent businesses, and we have to think not only about our business, but also about us personally. And some of the things we need to think about is, what do we need to make personally, right? Like, that $13,000 that person had left over, is that enough for them to live? Does that cover their mortgage? Does that cover their personal car? Does that include, insurance, whatever that is for their personal expenses? Do they have enough? Because that's something that you have to factor if you're going to be dependent on your business, and say you don't have another source of income, then you have to consider what you need to live. The other thing too is just, you can kind of backwards plan your math from there. Okay, what do you need to live? If, say, for instance, you need $15,000 to live in that previous example, then you know that you're running short. So what do you need to do to make sure that you're adding more to your bottom line there, so that you can make sure that you cover your personal expenses as well? So you can kind of backwards plan from your needs, and then you can look and see what does your business generate, and is it covering your needs as well as your needs to be able to operate the business as well. And then the other thing too, this is really talking about what's called cash flow. And that's making sure that you have enough sources of income, that you have enough income coming through your business that lasts for several months. If not over time, you want like a good year of safety net in the bank, or at least credit that you could draw from. But hopefully you would have enough savings in the bank over time that you would be able to cover if you have like a tough spot, or if you need to reinvest in something, or equipment breaks, or whatever, something happened. Something in your business is going to happen, and something's going to be unexpected that's going to happen. And so you got to make sure that you get enough savings over time, to make sure you're building up savings over time to be able to cover those types of things. So these are just a couple of other areas to kind of think through as you're building your financial plan. So I'm going to stop there before we get to this and see if there are any questions, because I know I went through this kind of fast and there's a lot of moving pieces to this. So please ask questions if you have them.
So Jay, the question that is in front of us right now is, are payroll expenses before or after tax deduction?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. If somebody wants to jump in, if
Before.
they know, great.
Definitely
Before? Okay, good. See, listen, like I said, I hire a CPA and I have a payroll service.
So I think the technically correct answer is payroll expense is a tax deductible expense.
Okay. The person wasn't asking about paying taxes on the net income then, is that it?
Well, the question was just, is payroll expense before or after tax deduction? And I was responding that technically it is a tax deductible expense. It is not of consequence whether it's a before or after, because it's not like your personal compensation and how you treat it for tax purposes.
Yeah, that's a good.
But all those on the business's tax return, all the information listed under expenses would be tax deductible.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear Dr. Wood's perspective on this. She's a CPA.
I would guess I would say it a different way than how Bill said it, but the way I try to teach it is that you look at your revenues minus your expenses, whatever your income is, that's what you're going to be taxed on as far as your, so when what Bill was saying, he used the term tax deductible, but I don't use that term
Gotcha.
with businesses. I just say it's an expense, and all you can technically say it's tax deductible, but the main thing is that you are taxed on that bottom line, which is your net income. So I thought
defer to
the
you,
person was
Dr.
asking another question.
Yeah, I did too. Because when I looked at that, I was looking at the payroll expense line.
Mhm.
And, for my payroll, I know when I do payroll, the taxes are taken out automatically by the CPA. They take out the taxes. So if I pay somebody, say $5,000, then they take the tax out for that individual of the $5,000. For me, I've taken my hit on my line for paying them, and then they make sure that the taxes are pulled and allocated correctly, particularly if they're going to be a W-2 employee. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, the other question that was earlier is, do sales cover subcontractor costs?
So your sales is what you make. If you think about it, your sales is what you make before you take out any expenses or anything there. Your subcontractor costs are going to be in your cost of goods, or are going to come out of your cost of goods. So you're going to take labor out. So that's an expense. Your sales, think of your sales as positive, your expenses as negative. So if you want to do this in a simple way, you say, look, I'm making $10,000. I've listed out all these areas that are expenses. That comes out to 7. I've got 3 left. And then if you have a couple other things like rent and everything else, you subtract that out. And then what's remaining is what you can put in your pocket. That's kind of the simple way to think about it. So subcontractors, anything you're paying out is going to be an expense. So I use subcontractors. I know many of us online here in the group do. Dr. Angie, you do. I do. We have virtual assistants. We have different subcontractors that we use. That's an expense that I consider on my books every month.
Those are the only ones I see. Are there other questions before Jay moves into the homework? I think you can move on.
Okay. All right. So really for the homework, really what I'd like for you to do is run through your financials, add your sales, your expected costs. If you haven't already started your business, that's okay. You can think through what some of those expenses would be. You can do a little bit of research and see what they would be. For example, had I known about the shipping, I know shipping could be variable, but I could put in like, what's the maximum amount of shipping to the West Coast? And I can just use that to plug in as like a worst case scenario. But think through the expenses that you're going to have. Think about your sales. And then when you're done with that, kind of calculate your initial income. And if you want to do that, you can send that back to me and I can take a look at it and make sure that you're thinking through the different areas properly in the right way, or answer questions that you might have. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. The exercise is really, this is one of those things where you really have to do it in order to kind of learn it and know it. And then we'll be able to kind of guide you from there.
And Jay, I'd like to add here, so when I gave my talk about my fail cakes last week, I think it was, this is an area where I highly recommend you get comfortable with. This is an area where many of us as business owners may not be comfortable. It's finances. Oh, it's intimidating. I don't know what this is. You're cheating yourself and shorting yourself if you don't take the time to learn this. It's like anything else. You do it, you learn, work with an accountant. At least you need to know enough to know how much money you're making, how much money you're spending, and how much money you're keeping so that you don't get taken for a ride. And yes, you can do like Jay and I, and that's hire someone. I have a bookkeeper who keeps my books, and then I have a CPA who does my taxes. And both of them I get to call on with questions. But for the most part, I figure out my expenses. I figure out my income, and I report it to them, and they help me manage it. Do not skip learning this fundamentally is my message to you.
That's
for
right.
success.
That's so right. And you know, even though like I say, look, I hate the numbers, it doesn't mean that I don't know my numbers. I can tell you right now what I made today. And I can tell you right now what the top expenses I had from this last week. So, you know, one of the things that I did, and I see this question about software. So I use QuickBooks. And I use QuickBooks because, you know, it generates the reports that I need. The CPA has access to my QuickBooks. It has a P&L in there, and I'm able to see like my invoices, what I'm sending out, my cost, everything. Now, they are like what Dr. Angie said, they're managing that, you know, they're managing, making sure I have a bookkeeper that's making sure the invoices are going out and all that. But I look at that once a week, and I've sat down with my CPA enough to sit there and know what we have going on, where, you know, where there might be any potential hotspots. They ask me great questions. You know, they're asking me about, are you anticipating anything? Here are the tax ramifications if you do this. So they become just a great resource. But yes, know your numbers for sure. For sure.
You know, the other thing I would add to that, for those of you that have not started your business, I encourage you to financial plan on a month by month basis, because what that'll allow you to do is to plan for and see how your revenues will ramp up, because you won't start off producing as much revenue as you ultimately would like to, but it'll help you identify what expenses are like fixed expenses. Those expenses that are going to be there because you're in business without regard to whether you have revenues or not. And definitely the first year, candidly, you would serve yourself well if you created a month by month forecast for the first 36 months at least. Because your month over month view is very different than your a yearly snapshot.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. The other thing that running through this financial plan will help you out was make some strategic decisions. So a couple of folks that I've been mentoring through SCORE, they've been trying to decide if they want to do brick and mortar or if they want to continue to work, say, online with their products and their services. One of the things that I have them do is go back and make sure that they're running their financials, because if you sign up for brick and mortar, particularly right now with COVID, you are signing a lease. And if you sign a 12-month lease, you have to cover that. So if you have a bad month or a bad 2 months or whatever, and you still have to cover that. So that's either to come out of savings or whatever. But going through this financial plan also allows you to sit there and look and say, is it really worth making this investment, taking on this expense? Is it really worth doing for my business, or is it actually working just fine with the way I have it now? So great.
There's one last question. It's a statement, then a question. When starting a business, the income will be sparse initially. Yes, it will. And I thought I could handle it myself until the income becomes a little higher when I need more help. Am I correct?
That's kind of a tough one, because it's, in a way, it's a bit personal. You know, it depends on if you have other sources of income or savings or things like that. So for example, when I started my most recent business, before I left the corporation that I was working at, I had built up a year's worth of savings to make sure that my family and everything was covered. And that I also had money built up to invest in my company until it was generating the income that I needed. So everybody's situation might be kind of different. Some people are working a job while they're building their business on the side. So that's another scenario. So it really kind of depends. It really depends on your business and then your personal finances. The thing that I would say is that's where it's critical to do this exercise, to make sure that not only are you considering your business expenses, but also putting your personal cost, call it cost of living line in here. And then figuring out, are you generating enough? And if not, what do you need to do to get to that point? You know, is it, I mean, candidly, I've talked to some people that they're out driving Uber while they're building their business during the day, and they're driving Uber at night because they need just that little bit more to make it happen until they get to the right cash flows and income.
Yeah, Jay, let me ask for a clarification from the person that asked the question. They said, I thought I could handle it. What is the it? Is it handling your own accounting and books or handling the business? I'm not clear what it is.
It's the accounting and books.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. If you're assuming you're going to use QuickBooks, it would be a good idea to have an accountant or a QuickBooks expert set up your books. Because as good as QuickBooks is, one of the challenge about QuickBooks is it will accommodate you making mistakes and you won't even, and you'll never know.
Mhm.
So at least have somebody that is an expert with QuickBooks and knows accounting to set up what's called your chart of accounts. Then if you want to do your own bookkeeping until your business gets up and going, it at least increases the probability that your books will be correct and accurate.
And that, I think that's a great point. And I would add to that, don't assume that you cannot afford an accountant and they don't have to be a CPA that's setting your books up. As long as it's an accountant who is skilled, knowledgeable, and experienced in handling books. Like I said, I have a bookkeeper handles my books in general, and then I use an accountant to handle my taxes and to somewhat audit what the bookkeeper is doing. I find that to be a great check balance for me, because remember, I have a little skin in this game.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I don't repeat those valuable lessons learned from those fail cakes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so that's really good clarification, Bill. Because I do think it's important, to your point, to get an expert from the beginning. First time I used QuickBooks, I thought it was pretty intuitive. They make it seem pretty intuitive. I was able to get invoices out. I was able to reconcile them. I connected it to my bank. And then within about 4 months, all of a sudden my bank wasn't matching my QuickBooks, wasn't matching my business Amex, and it was just spiraling out of control. And when I went and hired somebody, they said, "What have you done?" And I said, "Well, all my expenses are here and my sales are here." And they were like, you're right, they are. And at the end of the day, my report was right, but it wasn't pretty. And so they made it really functional, really pretty. And then actually for a while, I did do my own bookkeeping from there. I really just needed the CPA at that point. But then as I started generating more business and just more activity, that's when I got a bookkeeper.
Yeah, I did some research. So the hourly rates I found range from the high 80s into 125 in general for bookkeepers.
Mhm.
you know, again, it depends. I actually found someone on LinkedIn through just a quick search of some contacts there. So again, don't assume you can't afford it, because the heavy lifting is done on the front end when they set up your chart of accounts. And from there, it's more routine, and you're talking about hourly rates. I'd much rather spend $100, $200 a month and know that that's taken care of, so that I can focus on the things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
the other
spending,
thing, going back again, if you haven't started your business yet, these are the kind of things that you will discover as you create your financial plan.
Mhm.
And it'll give you the opportunity to discover what is the cost of a certain function,
Mhm.
so that you can plan for that, so that you can go, okay, when I open my doors, I know that I'm going to have these expenses. I'm going to say in the first month, whether I have a single customer or not, and you will have thought through, how will I handle that expense without regard to the revenues that I have. And you'll get to see what expenses are the result of producing the revenues, which is cost of goods sold, and what are the expenses, as I've said a couple of times, that exist because the business exists.
right.
And
Yeah.
when you know what those are, then you're set. I mean, you can handle a month or two without a lot of revenue, because you already know what the expenses are going to be, and you will have solved the problem of how you will handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Do you give access to your CPA for your business bank account? I did. I mean, they have access to it through QuickBooks. Um, every once in a while, QuickBooks will disassociate itself for whatever technical reason from my bank, and they have the ability to reconnect it. They can't write checks. Like, they can't do anything with my bank account, but they can see my bank account, and they can see what's in it and make sure that it matches what they're showing on their books.
So Dr. Burdell shared his bookkeeper is $75 per hour, well worth it.
Yeah.
That's definitely in the range. There was another.
Yeah, do you include paying yourself if your business is not generating income? If it's not profitable, then you're not really able to pay yourself. At least for me, you have to be profitable. I mean, that's where you have to really consider what they call the bottom line, which is that net ordinary income, the very bottom line, and make sure that, do you have that, and is it enough to pay you and cover what you need personally?
It's called sweat equity.
I think this one we'll have to dig in on a little bit. The food service industry, various vendors. This sounds like you're looking maybe for different suppliers in this situation. So I think if that's the case, then that's going to be really researching who those different suppliers would be, and then having conversations with them to see what they're going to charge you. Are they going to do like bulk? You know, that's kind of a individual vendor supplier situation there. I personally don't know of any food vendors,
Yeah.
but we can.
But another possible starting point, as I understand, in the food service industry, one, the market's going to kind of give you a lot of information about what you can charge for the food. And then the challenge is food cost. And so I don't know what type food you're talking about, but let's say it's ABC food. You know you can sell it for $3. There are formulas for what the food cost has to be. That'll at least tell you what you can afford
Yeah, I mean, I think really, and this could be for anybody, if you're relying on vendors or suppliers or anything like that, Dr. Angie said it, there's gonna be some sweat equity in there. I'm a partner in a couple organizations, and we rely on manufacturers and other vendors. And, we have, some of them we have bid for our business, others, they are manufacturers. So we are having to, negotiate with them for their pricing and what they're going to provide, and make sure that it fits the market that we're in. So probably the same with food. All right. Looks like we are done with the questions. All right. So I am going to hand it over to Darlene.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. Well, with all the information that you've heard this evening, I am sure that your head is going like this, and you're trying to figure out, how do I put all these things into place? And I think this is a very good segue into the self-wheel, the self-care wheel, just to take care of yourself. I happen to find this, it's a wheel, but I took it out of the wheel just so we can go one at a time and look at how we take care of ourselves with all the information that we've just been given, taking care of our finances. And some of us, at least for me, I'll share a short story. I think I may have shared this before, but my husband and I, before we got married, I had a school bill, a college bill, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to take care of this bill. We had just gotten engaged, and we were looking over our finances, because this is a finance whiz. And he said, so let's see all the bills we have. And I had this one school bill, and he looked at me and he told me, he said, listen, these are nothing but, money is nothing but numbers on a page, and you have to tell them where to go, and you have to deal with it as issues. Just take it as something that, you tell it what to do and it'll do it. So I had to learn that when we're dealing with numbers, when we're dealing with money, or we're dealing with anything that happens to shake us a little bit, we've got to take a step back and know how to handle it. And one of those things is definitely looking at how we take care of ourselves outside of the arena of finances, or outside of the arena of the employees, outside of the arena of the vendors and the people you're going to deal with. You've got to take a look back at how are you going to deal with yourself before you deal with all these others. So let's take a look at overcoming overwhelm. Let's take a look at our first slide. On our first slide, it talks about us coming into, you can go to the next one, Jay. Yeah. These are the different ones that we're looking at. We're looking at psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, professional, and physical. All these different areas that can at times overwhelm us. And whether that be in our personal life or in our business life, we want to be able to have some tools and some mechanisms whereby we can create a calm and create more of a serene life, so that we can deal with these the different things that face us. Let's go to the next slide. I want to go through this and make sure that I make enough time for we have a special thing I wanted to share with you at the end. So I want to make sure that we have enough time to go through this, but I do justice to the information that I'm giving you this evening. So when we're looking at psychological self-care, we're looking at positive relationships with others. We're looking at your personal mastery, your feelings of purpose. You're looking at having a state of balance. So when we're looking at these types of things, I'm giving you tools as to what you might want to do to create a psychological pathway to self-care. So we look at these, it's self-reflection, and these are different things that you can grab. It says, well, I'm not into ballet, but you may be into relaxing in the sun. You may not go to the symphony, but you love aromatherapy. I love the story that Jay shared about aromatherapy. I fell in love with those essential oils. Those things do me so well. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, I've got my diffuser and I'm saying, what's the day that I need to create? Do I need to have that day, this part of the day where I need to have something that's getting me moving, or do I want something that's going to allow me just to be in a calm? And that calls for different types of oils that you have. So, well, that's a whole nother class. But when we think about what we can do to make sure that we create a psychological well-being, one of the things that's most important is self-reflection. That's taking a look on the inside. What is it that we're doing to better ourselves? Are we doing the things that are important to us as individuals, and not what other people may seem important for us, but what do we see it? And therapy, I'm calling out one of my professors, Dr. Cheryl Kirk Dugan. She told us this when we were in seminary. She said, every minister needs a therapist. And at the first time she said it, I said, why? But I understood very clearly that when people come and download and drop and dump things on you, you have to have a place to release. You have to have a place where you can let go and you don't carry it as a weight, because that takes you off balance. And you've been in conversations where someone's come into your space and they vented and they shared with you what they were angry about and all these things that just upset them. And they leave and they're like, I feel so much better. And you are looking like, oh my God, what did they just do to me? So that's why it's important. Therapy is very important, very vital to our psychological well-being. Joining a support group. There are people and situations that we have dealt with, especially in the last few years, where things have been going awry. You need to have, if you're dealing with divorce, if you're dealing with death, if you're dealing with a breakup in a relationship, any kind of thing, there are support groups that can help you manage. Because you see, all of these things, they play into business dealings, because sometimes we make poor decisions based upon how we might be feeling. And we don't want to make a poor decision. We don't want to make a knee-jerk decision. So we want to be on even keel. So it's going to be important that we are looking at these different things in our psychological well-being. And I think one of the most important things on this particular list is the last thing. It says practice asking and receiving help. A lot of times we are great for giving advice. We are great for giving people information, but how willing are we say, I need some help? Can somebody please help me? Can someone answer this question for me? Or do we try our best to figure it out on our own? I believe that one of those things that if you need help, it is always the best thing to do is to open up your mouth and ask for help. Let's go on to our second. Emotional quality. That's when we look at our individual experiences, where we are economically, where we are in our situations, where we're living, those things around us.
It's 7 o'clock.
For example, think about this. When COVID-19 hit and it broke out here, we had a lower emotional well-being of 74%. People's emotional well-being went down 74%. Why? Because of the fact that there's things that are off kilter. Now, how does that affect you in business? If you're feeling that way and others are feeling that way, how is that going to affect business? So what do we do? What kinds of tools can we use to make sure that we're standing Again, standing at a level, in a level playing field. Where are those affirmations? I remember watching Being Mary Jane, and I remember she would have all these Post-it notes all over the place. And I thought it was, this is great. You've got to remind yourself that it's okay. You remind yourself that business is good. You remind yourself that you're good. You remind yourself that you can make quality decisions. You remind yourself that things are going to work out. You remind yourself that you are loved, that you're necessary, you're needed. These affirmations that I do make good business decisions. These types of things you want to remind yourself, so you create that emotional well-being environment, so that no matter where you are in your house, there's something positive. Where are those positive sayings on your walls, that when you look in your house or wherever your office may be, that you see something that reminds you, getting it done today. We're getting it in today. So here we go. Let's take a look at, I don't know if any of you have pets, but it's great to, cuddle with your pet, or tell yourself that you're beautiful or that you're handsome. We can tell us, especially on those days that we don't feel it. I mean, I recall the day that I didn't feel the most beautiful. That's when I made my face up even more. I did more of a dramatic look, because I said, you know what, I've got to go beyond this, because I'm not feeling it, but I'm gonna make myself feel it. And I made myself up. I did my hair, got dressed, and someone asked me, where are you going? Nowhere. But these are things that you do to create that emotional state of balance. And lastly, practice forgiveness. Not only forgive others, but forgive yourself. Even if you made a mistake, if you made a wrong decision, it's okay. But forgive yourself so you don't remain there. You don't want to remain in that state of imbalance. So forgive yourself and say, you know what? Tomorrow will be here and I will get an opportunity to make it right. So let's go to our next slide. Spiritual. Again, self-reflection is kind of like this thread that goes through here. It's real important. It's the ability to experience and integrate meaning and purpose in life through a person's connectedness with yourself, with your connectedness with other people. You want to have, again, that ability to just live at one with you. I want to also cause you to think about, in spiritual, and I didn't think that this was actually a part of spirituality, but the more I looked at it and the more I uncovered it, when I looked at the arts is very spiritual. So going into a museum, it can be a very spiritual experience. Now, I know now with COVID, we'll have to do it virtually, but the fact that we can have the arts to speak to us, what does it say to you? How does it, again, create a sense of calm, a sense of balance, where you can begin to think on a clearer level? Also, music, meditation. We've talked about meditation with Sharon, and she just so eloquently talked about mindfulness and meditation and those types of things. Very important. Those are very important for centering ourselves, for bringing us back to center. Again, finding a spiritual mentor, having someone that's going to be with you to walk you through and talk you through certain things that you have questions about. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to take some yoga. I'm going to take some yoga lessons. I'm going to figure out how to do it. Yes, thank you, Dr. Kirk. I'm going to practice some yoga, because I think that's important about centering and balancing. Again, creating that even balance in our lives. And again, as you see, foster self-forgiveness. That is so critical and so key, because we in business, Sometimes we don't know what we're doing and we get caught up in something and we don't have the answer. And we're like, oh, I screwed up over here, but it's okay. Because now we've got all these wonderful SCORE people that are going to help us. And we're going to overcome these things that we have run into because we're here to help one another. Let's go on to our personal. Our next one. Personal. This is really good because what we're doing, we're looking at ourselves. We're looking at how satisfied are we with our own lives? How satisfied are we with the decisions that we made, with the particular business that we chose? Did we choose the business or did the business choose us? Did we take the time to sit down and think about it? Say, what kind of business do I really want? Did we flush out what it looks like and how it's going to be beneficial, not only for us, but for those we believe we've been called to serve? That's going to be so important that we learn who we are. We figure out what we want in life. What is it that we really want to do? And looking at the long-term, short-term goals, those are critical. Those are key. Because what we start, it's something that continues to just grow like when you pop popcorn. Starts off with one kernel, but then it pops and continues to grow and grow larger. And we want to know that we're growing with it because it's something that started innate with us. So we want to, we talked about this earlier in our classes about our doing board. And we wanted to make sure that we're making sure we're getting things done. What about our relationships? What kind of friendships do we have? What people are we spending time with? Are we spending time with people that are pulling us, people that we are walking with, and then people we are bringing behind us? Are we making sure that we have well-rounded relationships? Those are important. Getting out of debt. Whew. That's a big one. And we talked about that today. We try to avoid as much debt as possible. But if we have to do any kind of debt, let's do good debt, right? Make it good debt.
Like school, donating to Shaw and going back to school.
Yes, good debt.
Education's always a good debt.
Education is always good debt. And then spending time with your family. And I thought this one was kind of cute. And I'm thinking about maybe trying it, learning to play the guitar. I'm not sure. But something that causes you to think and to create. That's really what it's about. It's about creating a new and adding to you and stretching and deepening who you are. Let's go to our next one. Professional. Now, these are all in capital. And the reason why they're all in capital is because you need to take time for lunch. Why? You have to eat. You have to eat healthy foods. You have to make healthy choices. You've got to drink water. You've got to set those boundaries. I'm just going to walk through these really quickly. You've got to set boundaries, so you've got to know when to say no. You've got to know. Now, I know Dr. Angie has talked about this, that we have worked till 3 and 4 in the morning and burning the candle at both ends. But sometimes you've got to know when to shut it off, shut it down, turn it off, leaving work at work. And yes, and sometimes it can be very difficult, but we've got to be at the point where we say, I've got to turn it off, because at some point you've got to turn into you, because you are not the job. You are a person who has been given an ability to do a particular thing, but that is not who you are. So you want to make sure that you have a level of accountability. Who's holding you accountable to the time that you're spending? Where's that rest time? Are they texting you and saying, did you take a break today? Did you get up and walk around your house or walk around the block? Did you have your water? Did you drink, some good fluids? Did you have a time that you are just doing something? Did you go grocery shopping? Are there people that are holding you accountable? And having support is vitally important. Having that positive support of your colleagues, those that you work with, and they don't have to be in the same business as you, but if they're your colleagues and they are supporting you in what you're doing, you're making sure that you're taking good care of yourself. Learn to say no. You can sing it if you have to. You've got to be able to say no, because there's some things you just cannot say yes to. Because when you're saying yes to everything, you're saying no to that thing that may be most important. So you want to be able to say no, say it with a smile, and it does not require an explanation. Take a class. Take a class at Shaw. Woohoo! Take Dr. Angie's class. And take a vacation. And even if it's a staycation where you just turn off everything and you are away, where you are not involving yourself in work, you want to be able to clear. It's like giving yourself a mind cleanse, taking that time to take care of you. Okay, we're going to go to our last one, which is physical. And this is some of the things that we've talked about. Make sure that everything is copacetic in your home, that you're going to the doctor like you're supposed to, making sure that for the women, they get their mammograms and the guys get prostate checkups. We get our colonoscopies and all those things. You know, having those checkups is important, because we never realize what's going on in our bodies. Sometimes we've gotten used to walking around sick. And it has become a part of us. So we don't know that we're out of line. So when we go to the doctor and they uncover certain things, they're like, but I've been doing this every day. But it's become so much a part of us. So it's going to be important that we take care of ourselves. Yes, and restoration is so critical. We've got to restore ourselves back, give us back what we need, all those good enzymes, all those good qualities, to make sure we take care of ourselves. That's why getting a massage is really good. People think that massages are bougie sometimes, but I think that they are necessary, because they get rid of toxins in our system. If they're done correctly with the right massage therapist, they get rid of toxins. They get rid of aches and pains and stresses that are in our body. Those things are very important. Acupuncture, bubble baths, kissing, all those types of things. Ask for nurture. Say, I need a hug. We need at least 12 hugs a day, 12 touches a day, at least. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. Take a walk. Turn off the cell phone. I think we talked about that at one time before. It's okay to turn it off. They will still be there when you turn the phone back on. The people will still be there. And make sure that you have me time. So now, and I want you to take this time, because this is the next section. My next section is called a meditation posture. Now, if you'll see these words, I'd like for you, if you can write them down. I think that this is real important for you to do this. Your meditation posture, a time for you to just sit and reflect on you. This is really important, because when we're dealing with business, it can be very, very, it takes a lot of brain power, and it takes a lot of energy to deal with business. And so there's got to be a time where we step back and just turn ourselves inward so that we can deal with ourselves. Turn ourselves inward. And in a sense, it's like you put yourself in a bubble so that it's just you and your thoughts. So what is your meditation posture? That first word is pause. Take a pause. It means to temporarily stop or rest, a cessation of an activity, because of doubt or uncertainty, in a momentary hesitation, where it's like you've got to make a decision and you're not exactly sure what that decision is going to be. So instead of deciding, it's good to just take a pause. It's good just take a breath. It's good to just sit back and not make a decision. Pausing is very critical because we want to make good decisions all the way around. We pause to give time to process an action or something that was spoken. In the scriptures, they use the word salah, and that's a time to think. It's a time to reread that what you read before going forward to what is next, and to reflect upon it. What decisions have you made up until this point? What decision are you thinking you want to make? But let's take a pause before we move forward. That second letter is observe. Observe your relationship with yourself and with others. Observe your relationship with that higher power, that one that you serve. Observe your relationship. How have you grown closer to yourself to understand who you really are and what you really desire out of life? Have you taken time to observe the decisions that you have made up until this point? How have you been interacting with other people? How have you been interacting with your own heart? Have you become true to yourself? Again, are you making a decision based upon what others have put upon you? Or are you making the decision based upon what you know to be the decision you need to make at this particular time for your business, for your home life, for those you are in relationship with? How much time do you spend in observation? How much time do you spend just meditating on what you've done up until this point? That next letter, the next word is silence. Some of us are afraid of silence. We feel like something has to be going on. It's like there has to be music in the background. There has to be the radio going. It has to be the television. It has to be people. It has to be something. But sometimes silence is so golden. There are buildings that are think tanks, and all you do is go in and it's silent. There's no noise, not at all. Why? Because you need to be able to cleanse here, get rid of excess things. And sometimes just doing this helps to get rid of excess things so that you really have an opportunity to sit with yourself. And a lot of times people don't want to sit with themselves because they may be afraid of what they'll find. But if we take the time to sit with ourselves and we lean into who we are, that's one of the best things that we can do, because that's really being honest with yourself, honest with your feelings, honest with where you live, so that as you're moving forward, you're going to move forward knowing that you're coming through an honest space. An honest space. And silence rolls into thinking, because it gives you the opportunity to truly think about what you are thinking about. What are you deciding? What are you ruminating on? What are you allowing yourself to to conjure up. And I don't mean that in the bad sense where you're making stuff up, but those things that are already there, you're actually pulling them up. It's as though it was hidden or in a closet, and you're opening the door of that closet and you're taking it out and you're looking at it and you're examining it and you're saying, is this something that I need from my life? Or is this something that I need to get rid of? Is this something that needs to be away from me so that I can be my best self? And when we begin to do those types of things, when we start thinking about where we are and what we're doing and where we're going, it helps us in making more informed decisions regarding our businesses. And then we will understand, we'll comprehend, we'll perceive the intended meaning. We're going to achieve the nature or the significance, or we'll get an explanation of those things that had been plaguing us before. See, when we're busy doing things and things are happening and you're not taking the time just to sit and be quiet and think and all of that, things are going on. And sometimes we just make decisions just, I'm going to shoot first and then I'll aim. And that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to sit and aim, make sure that we're looking at our bullseye and say, I need to hit that target right there, and take the time to acknowledge what it is that I'm doing. So we reflect on all of that and we understand the decisions that we are making. Reflection is so critical and so key. Reflecting on the decisions that we made before. Do we want to do them again? How did they work? Was it good? Was it bad? Ugly? What was it? And as we reflect upon it, it says, how did this better help my business? Or did this hinder my business? Do I want to go in that same direction? And then after you have taken the time to pause and observe and sit in silence and think and understand and reflect, then you can exhale. Because then you've taken the time to look at all of these things. And maybe you haven't been able to solve every single one of those problems or those situations or those things in your mind. But at least what you've done is you have gotten them out of here. You put them somewhere on a piece of paper in your journal. And I pray you are using your journal and you are writing these things out and getting them out. And then you are then more able to make a better quality decision because you have thought through the entire process. And I think that it's very important that we have a meditation posture, that we make sure that we spend time doing these things, spending time to make sure that we are looking to pause. We've got to take that pause to get to the exhale. I think that is so very important for us as men and women in our own lives, as we looked at the wheel with our professional life, with our physical life, our emotional life, with our spiritual, all of these areas, we want to make sure that we have become even keeled in our life. Now, this last thing I'd like to share with you is a video that I found. And when we were talking about all of these different things, the pause and everything, what really came to my mind was this, is that if we think a particular way, we can bring these things into fruition. And so this particular video, it's something for you to watch. And I want you to read it. And it's talking about this thing right here. It's in the back of your head. It's called the reticular activating system. And many of you may have heard of it. And I want you just to watch this video. And then I'm going to come back and just share a little bit about it. And then we'll go into questions. Go ahead, Jay.
And just so everybody knows, there's no speaking on this video, you'll hear maybe a little music in the background, but it's visual, not audio.
Well, there you have it. What you think about, what you focus on, that's what you bring into fruition. So what are we thinking about? What are we focusing on? How are we spending our days? Are we spending our days talking about what can be, what the possibilities are, that they are endless? Or are we saying this day is endless? Today, I want to encourage you to really focus on what it is that your expectations are, not only from yourself, but from your business, those you are in business with, And I believe that as we have gone through the numbers, and we've talked about a lot of that tonight, I want to encourage you to think about how all of these things are going to affect you in the long run, that the RAS is truly in effect. So if you've got any questions or comments, it was my pleasure to serve you all tonight.
I don't see any questions, Darlene, but I see a lot of comments. That was good. I ask my client every day to change her focus and speak positive things. Another one, self-talk is real. It comes about because the words are powerful and they will lay dormant until it's time to come alive after it's put in the atmosphere. Oh, here's one. Do you have any suggestions for how to focus on the new beliefs?
Yes, I do. We looked at when you're looking at the RAS, and I'm sure Sharon, you can jump into, when you're looking at the RAS, what is it that you say to yourself? And this is really critical. What we say to ourselves is vitally important. And what we say out loud, that's why the affirmations are very important. That's why a journal, a gratitude journal, is very important. That's why it's important for you to surround yourself with people that have positive attitudes. And there are books that you can read that can talk to you about speaking positive. And I just had the name of a book in mind and it just went away. But I think it was Napoleon Hill. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about what you say to yourself. He talks about making positive affirmations. I believe that it's important that when you're making change, now I understand that change does not come overnight. People say 21 days to create a new habit. It's really about 66 days. It's like 21 days times 3, because you are actually it's like you're erasing something, creating something, and then cementing it in. So it takes about 66 days to create a new habit. And one of the things that is really critical is what we say. We've become very, it's nonchalant that we would say, oh, I'm just not feeling myself, or I'm just not feeling good. It just kind of rolls off our tongue, and because I remember a friend of mine, she taught me this. I was about 15 years old. I went to a friend's house, walked in his home, and his mom was there. And the usual thing we say is, hi, how you doing? And you expect people to always answer you and tell you that they're doing fine. And this day, this lady fooled me. I walked in, I said, hi, how you doing? She says, I'm doing terrible. And my response was, oh, that's good.
I'm sorry.
Because I was not paying attention. And she did that on purpose, because sometimes we don't pay attention to what we say. So I want to challenge you to really be very intentional about how you are speaking to yourself. Because we are good to encourage others. We are good to say, no, it's going to be fine. You're going to be great. But we've got to turn that on its head and talk to ourselves and say to ourselves, what is it that we are expecting as a change? And then we have to do the work to bring about the change.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with everything Darlene has said. And 2 things come to mind for me. One thing as it relates to beliefs, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, because our beliefs are often what are driving our behaviors. So it's really important to kind of identify what beliefs are at play. So one approach I like to suggest is to notice where you typically struggle. whether it's procrastination or overwhelm or whatever it is, and identify what beliefs you have in that particular area, because we can't change anything that we don't kind of recognize that's there, right? And to also appreciate that these beliefs are often formed when we were very young, and they're beliefs that we formed, they're beliefs that were passed down to us. So it's not just simply an intellectual exercise to change our beliefs. And sometimes we know better here, and then we don't immediately do better, and then we judge ourselves for it. And then we kind of create this loop of self-judgment that make it a lot more difficult to really adopt healthy, affirming beliefs. So really, one is just to bring some compassion to the practice of changing beliefs. The other point I wanted to make is oftentimes our beliefs are driven by identities that we've assumed, that we've taken on, that we've cultivated, that we've adopted. And so it's important to understand what identities, kind of like do an identity audit, you know, like what identities have we taken on? Do we see ourselves as a business owner? Do we see ourselves as an entrepreneur? Do we see ourselves as someone who will never make it? Do we see ourselves as someone who is always late, like Darlene was saying? Like unearth some of those identities, because oftentimes the identities that we've bought into, our habits come out of those identities. Do you know what I mean? So we actually have an opportunity to say, wait a minute, this identity doesn't serve me anymore. It may have served me, people pleasing may have served me when I was 20 or 30 for some reason, but it doesn't serve me now. Or being late may have served me before, but it doesn't serve me now. So bringing more deliberateness to the identities that we're holding on to, that we're cultivating, which ones do we need to let go of? And then once we take on an identity, maybe one identity is I'm a successful business owner. And so what does a successful business owner do? Well, that successful business owner does certain things throughout the day. So they're not just habits or doings. They're actually a natural outgrowth of an identity that you're strengthening once you've made that decision. So, and like Darlene was saying, that takes time. It's kind of like drops in a bucket. It's kind of like using mindfulness to recognize what's actually happening, and then practicing pivoting. Noticing, oh, I'm feeling self-doubt, or I'm feeling like, I'm feeling like I want to procrastinate. It's actually bringing some awareness to that moment, allowing your mind to go from the primitive brain to your prefrontal brain, which is the more wiser part of yourself, and then take action from that place. So using mindfulness to notice the choice point, and then practicing pivoting. And then in the pivoting, when you're pivoting, you're weakening those old thought patterns. And then you begin to strengthen new ones. And then over time, all of a sudden your behavior starts to shift. And so that requires some patience. So it's not like a doing. It's not like you're doing this. It's like you're living into this. It's kind of a different lens, but it can be a much more powerful lens, because I'm going to do this for 2 months, and I'm going to go back to my old way of being. It's kind of like, what can you commit to in terms of identity, in terms of ways of showing up for yourself and your business, and then practice each day. And then what you practice, you will strengthen.
And very
just like
much,
anything else, right?
Yeah, very much like not watering a plant. If you don't water that plant, it will die.
Yeah.
And that's key. So
Yeah.
it's really taking care of the plant that you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you've got to give it what it needs.
And we're practicing these thought patterns every day.
Absolutely.
We're practicing we're practicing anyway.
That's
we may
right.
be practicing self-doubt. We may be
That's right.
practicing procrastination.
Yes.
We're practicing something. So the invitation is really to, how can we be more deliberate about what we're practicing? Practice confidence, practice what's going to serve you. And that's a choice that we have, but it becomes a lot more difficult to do that if you're not present to the choice point. Otherwise, you'll just continue to go on automatic pilot. because that's just how your brain has been wired over the years. So then it doesn't have to be a laborious practice. It can be a beautiful practice because you're living into your best self. So yeah. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. One more thing about affirmations. I love affirmations as long as you can believe them. Affirmations can be, they're kind of tricky because you don't want to try and tell yourself something that you don't quite believe, because then it creates an opportunity to judge yourself. So if you don't quite believe you're a good business person, say, I am becoming a good business person, if you can believe that. Or I'm not, or don't just say I'm a healthy person. If you're staring in the mirror and you're clearly not a healthy person, you say, I'm becoming a healthy person. So the affirmations become powerful when you can believe them.
Right.
So it's not like telling yourself a story.
I'm a millionaire.
Right, exactly, right. Because you know you're not. So then it just becomes this way you beat up on yourself. But you can say, I'm on my way to becoming a millionaire.
Yes.
And then so what does that person do?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Patty, do you have anything else? I think that rounds out our content.
Yes. What I wanted to do is allow Dr. Wood to come back and speak to us because she has an announcement. So we'll allow her to do that right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I forgot to mention that we have a workshop that's being hosted by the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center for next week. The name of the workshop is, say it again. Breaking the Ceiling. Why are there still so few Black executives in corporate America? In America. If you want to find out, it's going to be Wednesday, 6 o'clock. If you want the details like the Zoom link, just go ahead and email me again. My email's in the chat. But I think that we have a series, it's not conflicting with the SCORE series, but we have one presentation per month for the rest of the year. So next week, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we'll have that presentation. Then after that, one more in November and one more in December. And we look forward, we want to have our community involved in what we're doing at Shaw. And of course, it's free.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Wood. If we can get over to that series, we'll certainly come. I also wanted to remind everyone, voting is still going on. You can vote in person during early voting. You can also, if you're not registered, you can register to vote. We have 9 more days left. So I went on Sunday. It took me about 50 minutes and it went very well. Everybody's social distance. They had their mask on. So I got that done and it really made me feel a lot better. So I hope you all will take advantage of the early voting. I wanted to also remind you that again, that next week, we will not have this class next week on Thursday. We've been going hard for 8 weeks. So we're going to take 1 week off. And that will give you all time to catch up on your homework and get organized for the following week. And we'll come back and get started up for 3 straight weeks. And then we'll take off Thanksgiving Day. Of course, that's a Thursday. And then we come back for 2 more weeks and our course will be complete for this time. So those are the things I have for this evening. Does anyone else have anything? I just wanted to thank the group again for coming back. We are enjoying you just as much as you're telling us you're enjoying the presentations. It's just very rewarding for us as well. So if everyone has said everything they wanted to say, we're ready to leave and we will see you all 2 weeks from tonight. You all have a great next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed session 8 and found it informative. This session, along with all of the previous sessions, has laid the foundation for your business plan success. As we move into session 9, expectations are that you continue to be laser focused on the content in your business plan. It is imperative that you continue to complete the homework assignments and turn them in for review. Also, do not pass on the opportunity to review the program's resource guide, which is listed on the Raleigh Score website. Here is the URL. Up next is Session 9, which is now open for registration. Simply go to www.raleigh.score.org. Click on the tab Take a Workshop and register today. Please keep in mind that we will not have a live video session next week. However, you can take this time to catch up on your homework assignments or review any of the previous training sessions on this YouTube channel. Therefore, the date for Session 9 is November 5th at 6 p.m. The session title is Financial Planning Session 2 and the Power of Mindfulness. Session 9 is an important follow-up to Session 8. Thus, it will require your focus on the material. Jay Graves and Sharon Shelton will be your facilitators for Session 9. We look forward to having you join us on November 5th. Until then, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
great night,
Rest well.
everyone.
Rest
Good night,
well.
everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.